Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News and Indian Perspective on All India Radio. This is Renu Kataria and with me is R.S. Raghu bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment and more. The headlines. India chairs 8th meeting of heads of border services of member states of Shanghai Cooperation Organization today. Union Minister for Environment, Forest and Climate Change Bhupendra Yadav says India is striving towards achieving national commitment of land degradation neutrality and restoring 26 million hectares of degraded land by 2030. Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal terms World Trade Organization's meeting in Geneva as successful, says India receives 100% success. Pakistan High Commission issues 495 visas to Sikh pilgrims from India to attend annual death anniversary of Maharaja Ranjit Singh. Chinese President Xi Jinping to host the 14th Brics Summit in Beijing on 23rd of June, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi to launch torch relay for the 44th Chess Olympiad on 19th June. The 8th meeting of heads of border services of member states of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization was held in New Delhi today under the chairmanship of India. It was attended by representatives of the border services of India, Kazakhstan, China, Kyrgyz Republic, Pakistan, Russia, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan and the Executive Committee of the Regional Anti-Terrorist Structure of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. The participants exchanged information reflecting assessments of the situation on the state borders of the SCO member states, trends and forecast of its development. The plan for the preparation and conduct of the Joint Border Operation Friendship Border 2022 was reviewed and approved. Member states supported the initiative of China to conduct a joint border operation of the border services of the competent authorities of the SCO member states Solidarity 2023 next year under its organizing role. They approved the work plan of the group of experts of the border services of the SCO member states for 2023.
Union Minister for Environment, Forest and Climate Change Bhupendra Yadav has said India is striving towards achieving the national commitment of land degradation neutrality and restoring 26 million hectares of degraded land by 2030. This focuses on sustainable and optimum utilization of land resources. He said public participation will play a crucial role in achieving this feat as India is building the future roadmap for combating desertification. Addressing the Desertification and Drought Day 2022 being organized by the Environment, Forest and Climate Change Ministry in New Delhi today, the minister highlighted that India has been at the forefront of bringing the issue of land degradation to the core of relevant international alliances for protection and conservation of environment. The ministry commemorates this day every year with an aim to generate large-scale awareness for understanding the key role of land in all environmental and economic concerns that the world as well as India is facing nowadays. Theme of this year's Desertification and Drought Day is Rising Up from Drought Together. Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal has termed World Trade Organization's 12th Ministerial Conference in Geneva as successful, saying that India has received 100% success. Addressing the media in Geneva after the conclusion of the ministerial conference, the minister said India has emerged as a credible and strong voice for the developing and least developed countries. He said India has proven unequivocally its ability at constructing consensus for the larger good as a global leader. Mr. Goyal said this will be the first ministerial conference when India sets the agenda. He said India put forth its position very boldly and became the voice of the developing world. He said India has strongly raised its voice to protect the interests of farmers, fishermen and poor. He said the world is facing multiple challenges and there were questions being raised about multilateral forums. He said this conference has once again strengthened multilateralism.
In today's Hotspot section, we bring you a discussion on WTO deliberations and the road ahead. In conversation are Shashank, former Foreign Secretary, and Simran Sodhi, journalist.
Today we are discussing the outcomes at the 12th Ministerial Conference in the WTO, where India was represented by Minister Piyush Goyal. We've also seen that at the end of the meet, India has hailed it as a victory and it has positive outcomes for India. Especially when we see on the fisheries issues, it is now that there would be a check on illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing in India's waters and elsewhere. There have also been other developments on the intellectual property rights, for instance, which is a stand which has been vindicated by India. Ambassador Shashank, when you see this outcome at WTO and in many of India's positions have been vindicated, how do you look at the progress?
It was a very complex negotiation, and I should congratulate our Minister Piyush Goyal for having come out with a successful conclusion which can be appreciated and lauded by most of the Indians. Because I remember when we were negotiating the TRIPS agreement in early 2000s, it was so difficult. They were willing to accept for the medicines under pressure from the various groups of developing countries. We had set up BASIC, we had set up other kind of groups also with other countries. But they were not willing to include vaccines. And this has continued for a very long time. So I'm glad that vaccines have finally been introduced into the WTO pledges. And I think that will really help very much the developing countries, particularly those who have suffered because of the shortage of vaccines. India has done its lot by contributing vaccines under the various programs, bilateral as well as the UN. So I think one has to congratulate the WTO Director General also, who was earlier the director of Gavi, the UN program for vaccine development and distribution. So that is one. Secondly, food security. This is very important that what India has achieved, because there were a lot of criticisms of India for not selling the food grains in the open market when the prices are rising constantly. And so India had to take a decision to protect the food security for its own population. So I think there also we have been able to come out successfully. So that is another important thing. For fisheries, I must say that Quad has recently signed some agreements to help with the regulating of the fisheries by setting up cyber network of satellites. India should have done that long time ago. If you remember, Law of Seas Conference had set up long time ago that the resources of the sea should be equitably shared mostly by the countries of the coast. India has not been able to develop those GPS, and a lot of illegal fishing goes on in India's waters. And I think, therefore, whatever we have achieved is very good. Of course, practically we'll work out these decisions on the ground and see that the people who are well entrenched already and making profits, whether the pharmaceutical companies, whether the illegal poachers, or those who wanted to corner the food grains in an open market, they do not try to sabotage it.
Ambassador Shashank, we also see that one of the outcomes of this WTO meet has been the trade-related aspects of intellectual property rights, TRIPS as we call it. The decision will boost export, vaccine equity, accessibility and affordability. A country can authorize production of vaccines patent elsewhere, and there would be no consent required, as well as there would be no limit on exports. So this seems to be a very welcome outcome of the WTO, especially when the world is still coming out of the COVID pandemic. And we also saw that during the pandemic, how difficult it was for the poorer, smaller nations to get access to vaccines. So how does this impact the world in a more fair fashion as we go forward?
I think it's an extremely important step. If you recall, the manufacturers or the patent holders were initially saying that they have been able to develop these vaccines so fast because of the patent protection. On the other hand, if you see that India, which had been asking for these patents to be waived in favor of national emergencies for vaccines, India was able to develop its own vaccines also. On the other hand, we found that many Indians who had taken the Covishield, which was produced in India based on a patent held by AstraZeneca, were not allowed to enter UK for a long time because they were willing to accept AstraZeneca but not willing to accept the Covishield produced in India based on that. So that was the other inequity. Thirdly, when India wanted to send out its vaccines, so those developed by India, they could send them out. But the others which had been being done under license from the international patent holders, it was not possible at all. So therefore, I think there will be greater equity. And if you remember that some of the manufacturers were insisting for sovereign guarantees from the countries that if they could not pay for these vaccines, then many of their assets could be acquired by those companies, including their embassies abroad. I think this is very, very iniquitous kind of a world relations. And one was thinking that Ukraine, of course, now we are facing this problem in Europe and on Ukraine conflict. But already the developing world had been suffering from so much, from food insecurity and then from the vaccine non-availability. So I'm glad that this has been worked out. India was being considered as one of the negotiation breaker, but then ultimately through hard negotiations and the guidance, I think, to the Indian delegation given firmly by our Prime Minister, we were able to get the support of all the players. And we were able to talk to developed countries like USA, UK, and the European Union and get their support. And I think that is also a very important role that was played by India.
Mr. Shashank, we also see that another outcome has been that the agenda decided on Wto reforms, which will make the WTO a more efficient, agile body. And the dispute settlement body will be revived and employ its expected role in settling trade disputes. This we see has been something which has been under discussions for quite a while, the need for reforms in WTO. So how much does this help and put confidence in the WTO that finally we will see some reforms in the body? And, this has been an ongoing discussion asking for reforms in the UN, UNSC, WTO. How positive is this outcome that, yes, finally we might actually see some reforms taking place?
I think what has happened is that initially when the Ukraine conflict had started, there was a feeling among the Western countries that they would be able to bring a quick end to the conflict by inflicting heavy pain on the Russians. It has not happened. And now there's a lot of realism which has come about. That has helped in making the international organizations, international bodies a little bit more pragmatic because now they are getting support of all the countries. One, those who can benefit from these conclusions, and secondly, those who are holding back on reforms in these organizations, now they are more willing to take advantage of the possibility of getting all the countries along with them. If you remember that this European conflict was being forced on countries in Asia, Africa, Middle East and others to follow suit. But all these countries, they were already suffering so much, so they did not want to suffer much more. And so therefore, they tried to keep themselves out of this conflict. And our foreign minister at that time had said that you always regard an Asian conflict as an Asian conflict. And you advise India, Pakistan, India, China to improve their relations. Whereas you consider that European conflict is a world conflict. So all the countries all over the world should fall in line with whatever your decisions are. So I think that has perhaps sunk in gradually. And especially among the policymakers, there is a greater realization that they have to get the support of other countries, willing support, not by forcing it down their throats.
Mr. Shashank, we also see focuses on working towards increasing productivity goals and addressing bottom of the world. And we've also seen that because of climate change, etc., the production levels have kind of wavered. How far do you think this outcome will help us in achieving a world where there actually is no hunger and you can actually be assured of food security?
Well, UN and FAO have adopted several resolutions for freedom from hunger campaigns because we have seen in the past tremendous famines affecting the Sudano-Sahelian region. And under the British colonial rule, we had seen at least 7 or 8 major famines in India, which had lost several million lives, maybe 25, 30 million lives during the British colonial rule. So therefore, there has always been this feeling among the developing world that they must come out of this sign of hunger among their poor people. I think India has worked tremendously on this score. The climate change, of course, makes things very difficult. While our production has gone up for food grains and other crops, but this time we have seen temperatures going up in the main crop belts to 45 to 50 degrees, which is really high. So I think these are the climate change issues which we need to take into account. We have to take care of the food security for our own people first. Then we have taken certain obligations in bilateral and other regional negotiations with other countries. And so we take care of them. India has been doing all that. But food security cannot mean that, India should put all its food grains in the open market, which can then be cornered by all kinds of international multinational corporations who study these situations very closely, how to take full advantage of the market problems and market opportunities.
Ambassador Shashank, just as we wind up our conversation, I just wanted to ask that we've always seen this gap between, what gets declared at the end of the summits and the implementation. How optimistic would you say should India be, or how cautiously optimistic should India be going ahead that these things would be implemented and the words that have been put out on paper would be implemented on the ground?
Well, one thing I would suggest is that in life-saving matters like vaccines and others, we should move very strongly and get the support of the people of the world to these decisions. I think they will get implemented. Secondly, we need to publicize the results very widely all over so that there is no going back. We have seen in the past that any decision taken positively at various meetings internationally are then tried to be sabotaged or one tries to go back on them in the subsequent meetings. So I think we should try to avoid that possibility. And since it's a very important decision for the livelihoods of so many billions of people in the world, I think we need to move ahead on this. And we have the support of the political leaders of the world, both developed and developing countries, and therefore we need to keep them on board with us in implementing these decisions.
With these comments, we bring today's discussion to an end. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pakistan High Commission in New Delhi has issued 495 visas to Sikh pilgrims from India to attend the annual death anniversary of Maharaja Ranjit Singh, scheduled to be held in Pakistan from 21st to 30th of this month. During the visit, the pilgrims would inter alia go to Panja Sahib, Nankana Sahib and Kartarpur Sahib. They would enter Pakistan on the 21st of June and return back to India on 30th June.
External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar has said that the global scenario highlights the need for countries of the Indo-Pacific to enhance cooperation and stand together. Speaking at the ministerial session of the Delhi Dialogue 12 in New Delhi yesterday, Dr. Jaishankar said the conflict in Ukraine is exacerbating concerns over food, fertilizer and fuel security.
The world is currently experiencing turbulence, which along with the consequences of the pandemic has made the global outlook even more uncertain and complex. Developments in our own region too have had their implications, whether we speak of Afghanistan or of Myanmar. Further away, the conflict in Ukraine is exacerbating concerns over food, fertilizer and fuel security. This global scenario highlights the need for countries of the Indo-Pacific to enhance their cooperation and in fact to stand together.
The minister said India and ASEAN contribute to the ongoing rebalancing of the global order.
It is natural, while surveying the larger landscape, that our ASEAN partners would have an interest in relations between India and China. So let me be clear that the development of our ties has to be based on three mutuals: mutual respect, mutual sensitivity, and mutuality of interest. The state of the border will be reflected on the state of the relationship.
Dr. Jaishankar asserted that the development of India-China ties has to be based on mutual respect, sensitivity and interest. He said that the state of the border will be reflected on the state of the relationship. The minister said, like the rest of the world, India and ASEAN are also recovering from the COVID. He said, a key takeaway is to be better prepared for future health emergencies. India and ASEAN have stood by each other during this pandemic. He said, India and ASEAN have already initiated cooperation in renewable energy, in wind and solar energy and smart grids through the ASEAN-India Green Fund. The minister said the International Solar Alliance is a particularly useful platform in this regard. Government sources in New Delhi have termed China's decision to put on hold India-US proposal to list Abdul Rahman Makki under the United Nations Security Council sanctions as unfortunate. Sources said this decision by China is extremely unfortunate given the overwhelming evidence against Makki. The sources said China should reflect on its response that signals double standards on combating terrorism. Sources also said protecting well-known terrorists from sanctioning in this manner will only undermine its credibility and risk exposing even itself more to the growing threat of terrorism. It runs counter to China's claims of combating terrorism, and this is not the first time that China has placed hurdles for the listing of known terrorists. In the past, it had repeatedly blocked proposal to designate Maulana Masood Azhar chief of Pakistan-based and UN-proscribed terrorist entity Jaish-e-Mohammed.
Chinese President Xi Jinping will host the 14th Brics Summit in Beijing on 23rd of June. The summit will be held in virtual format under the theme of Foster High-Quality Brics Partnership, usher in a new era for global development. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Hua Chunying announced it today. The announcement posted on Chinese Foreign Ministry website said President Xi Jinping will attend the opening ceremony of the Brics Business Forum in virtual format on 22nd of June and deliver a keynote speech. China is the chair of the 14th BRICS summit happening this year, which assumes importance as this will be the first BRICS summit after Russia-Ukraine war began, and Russia is currently under severe economic sanction by the West led by the US. President Xi Jinping will also host a high-level dialogue on global development in Beijing on 24th of June. The dialogue will be held in virtual format under the theme of Foster a Global Development Partnership for the New Era to jointly implement the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The volume of imported and exported cargoes at the Akora, Sona Masjid and Thammabil border crossing points (BCP) will increase by 50% by 2027 after the implementation of the trade facilitation loan of $143 million provided by the Asian Development Bank (ADB), said its country director Edmond Jinting. He was speaking on the occasion of the signing of a policy-based loan agreement between ADB and the government of Bangladesh to improve volume, efficiency, predictability and security of cross-border trade. Mr. Jinting further said that the average customs clearance and cargo transshipment time will also be reduced by half on these BCPs. The three BCPs will have an e-payment facility with their capacity increased to handle 5,20,000 tons per year of international transit cargoes. The ADB loan has of two components. The $90 million policy-based loan will support reforms in the legal framework of the country's customs processes and improve cargo clearance capacity, among others.
In Bangladesh, Army has been deployed for relief and rescue operations as the flood situation in Sylhet and Sunamganj districts deteriorated sharply. Official news agency BSS reports that the district administration has sought the support of the Navy for relief operations in the district today in view of the worsening flood situation. 20 upazilas and 2 municipalities of Sylhet city have been flooded due to continuous rain in the catchment area. The army officials have said that relief and rescue operations have been started in 3 upazilas of Sylhet and 5 upazilas of Sunamganj. The Civil Aviation Authority of Bangladesh, CAAB, has suspended activities at the Osmani International Airport in Sylhet for 3 days as water reached near the landing area. Electricity supply is also likely to be affected as water has entered the Kumargaon power plant in Sylhet. European leaders expressed their support for Ukraine while meeting with President Volodymyr Zelensky in Kiev on Thursday. The visiting leaders vowed to back Kiev's candidacy to eventually join the European Union. French President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and Italian Premier Mario Draghi addressed a news conference jointly with Zelensky. Amid Ukrainian fears that Western resolve could wane, the visit carried heavy symbolism. France, Germany and Italy have all faced criticism for continuing to engage with Russian President Vladimir Putin. They also expressed concerns about millions of tons of grain backed up in Black Sea ports by the conflict, saying it could bring worldwide catastrophe. This is All India Radio giving you the world news. For quick news updates round the clock, follow us on Twitter at AIR News Alerts.
New York state legislatures overwhelmingly passed several bills today to tighten the gun laws, including a bill raising minimum age to buy a semi-automatic assault rifle to 21 years. The lawmakers also passed a bill that would ban civilians for purchasing bullet-resistant vests unless the individuals work in law enforcement or other specific professions. Another bill passed by the lawmakers would broaden the red flag law, expanding the list of people who can file for extreme risk protection orders, which allow courts to temporarily seize firearms from anyone believed to be a danger to themselves or others. Even as the United States is divided on enforcing gun laws, it was easy to pass these measures in the New York legislature as it's a Democrat-controlled state Senate and Assembly. The new measures announced by Governor Cassie Hochul, a Democrat, has signaled that she will sign the bills today. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will launch the historic torch relay for the 44th Chess Olympiad on 19th June at 5 p.m. at Indira Gandhi Stadium in New Delhi. This year, for the very first time, the international chess body FIDE has instituted the Chess Olympiad torch that is part of Olympic tradition but was never done in the Chess Olympiad. India will be the first ever country to have the Chess Olympiad torch relay. Notably, taking the Indian roots of chess to a greater height, this tradition of torch relay for the Chess Olympiad will henceforth always begin in India and travel across all continents before reaching the host country. FIDE President Arkady Dvorkovich will hand over the torch to Prime Minister, who in turn will hand it over to Grandmaster Vishwanathan Anand. This torch will then be taken to 75 cities in a span of 40 days before the final culmination at Mahabalipuram near Chennai. At every location, chess grandmasters of the state will receive the torch. The 44th Chess Olympiad will be held in Chennai from July 28 to August 10 this year.
In cricket, India levelled 5-match T20 international series 2-2 by defeating South Africa in the fourth match tonight. India beat South Africa by 82 runs at the Saurashtra Cricket Association Stadium in Rajkot. Chasing a victory target of 170, South Africa were all out for just 87 with 19 balls to spare. Avesh Khan picked up 4 wickets for the host by giving away only 18 runs, while Rasi van der Dussen scored highest 20 for the visitors. Earlier put into bat, hosts made 169 for 6 in stipulated 20 overs. Dinesh Karthik contributed quick 55 of 27 balls and Hardik Pandya scored 46 of 31 balls. And now a report from the business world.
Sensex lost by 135 points or 0.26% to finish at 51,360. Nifty also fell 67 points or 0.44% to end at 15,294. At the global stock markets, Asian share markets traded mixed. Japan's Nikkei 225 plunged 1.8% and South Korea's Kospi slipped 0.4%. Singapore's Straits Times was trading almost flat. On the other hand, Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index added 1.1% and China's Shanghai Composite Index gained 1%. European shares were up in intraday trade. Oil prices edged lower and were on track for a weekly decline as interest rate hikes from major central banks fueled worries about a sharp economic slowdown. Global crude oil prices fell around 0.5%. In intraday trade, Brent crude was trading at $119.30 per barrel. Back home, gold prices rose marginally by 20 rupees at the multi-commodity exchange for August contracts. The precious metal was trading at 51,610 rupees per 10 grams. Silver prices also gained 30 rupees to 61,560 rupees per kilogram for July contracts when reports last came in. And in the foreign exchange market, the rupee was steady against the US dollar. The rupee closed at 78 rupees and 8 paise against the US currency. Arjun Chowdhury for World News All India Radio.
Now let us have a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina sought support of Japan in making Bangladesh a developed country by 2041, reports Financial Express.
In Nepal, My Republica writes that Home Minister Balkrishna Khan has said that Nepal will not be involved in the United States State Partnership Program. Responding to queries raised by the lawmakers on the budget appropriated by the Ministry of Defence, Khan on Thursday said Nepal is not involved in the SSP and has no intention of being involved.
As per GEO News PTI Chairman Imran Khan Thursday called on the masses to hold demonstrations across the country against the imported government this Sunday.
Quick look at the headlines once again. India chairs 8th meeting of heads of border services of member states of Shanghai Cooperation Organization today. Union Minister for Environment, Forest and Climate Change Bhupendra Yadav says India is striving towards achieving national commitment of land degradation neutrality and restoring 26 million hectares of degraded land by 2030. Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal terms World Trade Organization's meeting in Geneva as successful, says India receives 100% success. Pakistan High Commission issues 495 visas to Sikh pilgrims from India to attend annual death anniversary of Maharaja Ranjit Singh. Chinese President Xi Jinping to host the 14th Brics Summit in Beijing on 23rd of June. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi to launch torch relay for 44th Chess Olympiad on 19th June. And now, before we end, let us listen to Mahatma Gandhi's favourite bhajan, Vaishnav Jan, by artists from Iceland on their National Day.
Vaishnav China Soho, Tene Kaji Jene, Pere Perai
And with that, we end this bulletin. We will be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.